Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so I am going to introduce Jenny L. She's coming to us from the Chicago group, and I'm so excited to hear her story. Jenny, it's your time. Thank you.
Thank you. That won't work. Okay. Hey, y'all. I'm Jenny Lawrence. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been kept sober by the grace of God since May 31st, 2007. And that is an absolute miracle. And I'm really grateful to get to be at the We Are Not Saints group. I am a little disappointed that Brandon, who asked me, so I'm grateful Brandon asked me, but he texted and said he was unable to make it. So Brandon happens to be like my bestie and one of my 10-step buddies, and I'm going to have to 10-step that later because I'm starting this off with a resentment. But I'm not really because, okay, so here, full disclosure, I'm glad to see Bruce and some people that I've seen before, and I was talking to my friend Betty back there, and I get this beckoning, like, you know, lady in the black dress. And I met Harry and Steve, but Harry told me how stunning I was, or am, fabulous. And then Steve said that should count double because it's coming from gay guys. I think really quadruple. But he said, you know, if you're just as lovely on the inside as the outside, and okay, so I do still have the defective character of ego and vanity. I don't know if anyone here can relate to that, but the truth is that's absolutely indicative of what God has done on the inside, is reflective of the outside, right? Because I've absolutely been transformed from this program where the book talks about we're inwardly reorganized, where I have this complete and utter just transformation of how I think, feel, and react towards life. And it's absolutely because of these 12 steps and because of this program and rooms like this with people like y'all. And I think it can apply because I have a past life visual of what I used to look like. So I'm going to start off with, I have selfies. They were my first selfies. They weren't called selfies back then. And they were taken on a really bad old camera phone in 2005. And I wanted to show you what he had done to me. And so I flipped this phone on myself and I took the picture and I emailed them to myself. And I kept them, and these are really bad printouts, and so I apologize that they're low res. You can see them really well when you zoom in on them on the email. But I'm just going to spread it, you know, I'll just share, you see them. So pass them around or whatever if someone wants to just, you know, whatever. But it's absolutely, Bruce has seen them. Some of y'all could probably tell my story. But it absolutely is indicative because the woman in those pictures where I have this huge knot on my temple and I have this busted split lip and my skin's bad and all this stuff, but you can't really tell well in the printouts, but you can tell it in the digital file. There's one of them where I'm just staring off into space, where I'm hopeless, I'm lonely, I have this vacant look, there's no light in my eyes. I'm living in what the book calls that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And that's the woman that came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And so truly, sorry, I have allergies. What you see up here today is what I just said. It's because of these steps. So anyway, I don't know. I said I'm Jenny Lawrence. I'm an alcoholic, May 31st, 2007. My home group is the Chicago group. I met Brandon there, and then he came over to y'all. And I think it's the best home group in the whole wide world for me. And we meet only on Wednesday nights, and we just found a new location too. We meet at Cochran Chapel United Methodist on the corner of Midway and Northwest Highway. And if you're ever over there, come on and see us. Anyway, so I'm going to start drinking. My first drunk of consequence, I was 17 and I was on a church camping trip. And alcoholism runs on both sides of the family tree, but for all intents and purposes, I came from a really good home, and there wasn't really alcohol in my home growing up. Now, I had had alcohol at times, but we won't get into that. So this is a drunk of consequence, where I'm at this church camping trip. We're like out at Possum Kingdom Lake or something, and I'm there with my boyfriend and this other guy friend and my sister and some girlfriends and stuff like that, and we're sitting at this picnic table. And I remember this random drunk redneck brings us this bucket of margaritas, and I remember his mullet. I remember what he was wearing. I remember him setting this bucket. He's like, y'all want some margaritas? And I remember him setting that bucket down. And I remember taking the little white styrofoam cup, you know, the ones like just like that, and I remember dipping it into that bucket. And then I remember taking that first sip. And more than anything, you know, I remember that taste, because, you know, margaritas are tasty. But really, I remember how it made me feel. Because I'm sitting there, and, you know, I've got the boyfriend to the right of me, and the guy friend to the left of me, and my sister, and, you know, kids I'd grown up with my whole life. And I didn't really realize until I took that first sip of margarita how I was sitting there with my shoulders just up against my ears. You know, and I took that first sip, and all of a sudden I could breathe all the way to my toes, and my shoulders relaxed, and I got that sense of ease and comfort that the book talks about coming at once. So I tossed that cup back, and the next thing I know, I dipped it in and drank it down and dipped it in and drank it down. And I think I single-handedly drank that whole bucket of margaritas. I don't think I let anyone get a drink in edgewise. And then the boyfriend and I decided that we're going to have sex, like you do when you're 17 and you're on a church camping trip. And so our tent was a little bit further down the road, and so I get up to, like, you know, try to go down there, and I realize that, like, I'm a little wobbly because my legs don't work very well because I'm wasted. I don't really know that then, but that's what happened. And so anyway, the boyfriend and the guy friend hoist me up, you know, like by my arms, and basically carry me back down the road. And I couldn't walk. Like, my legs didn't work at all. I remember just dragging my feet. And in hindsight, this was not the best of ideas, because the church counselor was, like, you know, across the little dirt road in another tent, like 7 feet away. My mother works at the church, you know, stuff like that. And anyway, so Mike and I decide that we're going to do what we're going to do. And so we start getting busy. And then the next thing I know is that other guy decided that he wanted to jump in. And I don't want to get any sort of discussion about what really happened on that church camping trip, but for what I know is that when I put alcohol in my body, that first time it was from 0 to like 160, and I was in no way, shape, or form capable of saying, hey, no, I don't want to have sex with you, and I don't want to have a threesome. But that's what ended up happening, and it was drama, and it was crazy, and everybody found out about it, and I was mortified. I was humiliated. You know, and I was dying inside, but everyone knew about it. You know, it wasn't subtle. And what happened was I had to put on this false sense of bravado and act like, you know, like, oh yeah, I chose to do this, woo! But really, I was dying inside. And, you know, there was a big church meeting, and you know, all the parents, all the staff, and if y'all have ever been to Citywide, that's the room where that happened. That's where my mother works. God's got jokes. But anyway, so that's what happened, and that's the first time that I drank. And I wish I could say that, you know, it's like I drank like a lady anytime since, but I didn't. There was always some sort of crazy consequence. So anyway, you know, and I sought that feeling out, because for this one moment, when I'm sitting at that picnic table, all the voices in my head were quiet. Because really what happens is I suffer from this incredible, unsheddable burden of self-consciousness, where everywhere I go, there's this voice in my head that says, you're not enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not enough. And the alcohol made me enough, you know, for just a second. And then, you know, I overshot the mark, and then what happened? And that happened every single time. But I always chased that, and so I sought to drink as much as I could ever since then, right? And then consequences happen. So anyway, I graduate high school, I go down to college in Austin, and very quickly my alcoholic life becomes the only normal one, because I'm not okay in my own skin. So I need to be with you or you or you because y'all make me okay. So I've got to do something every single night and be out. So I'm like, you know, I've got like 80s dance night here on Thursdays. I've got like $2 pitchers on Tuesdays. Like, you know, I had this plan. And every single night I'd say, okay, I'm just going to go have a pitcher, and I'm going to go home and study, or I'm going to have 2 drinks or 2 shots or whatever it is. And then I always overshot the mark. And I never understood why I couldn't call my numbers. And I'm the one sitting outside, you know, puking into the gutter, sitting out front of the bars on 6th Street, you know, or throwing up in my date's laps or something as they're coming to like a slow roll to drop me off because I'd gotten so wasted and embarrassed them. And then they're like, bye. I never understood why they never called me back. But, you know, anyway. And so alcoholism was like catching on, and I'm drinking and I'm partying, and I'm kind of learning how to control and enjoy my drinking in college meaning passing out on the cold bathroom tile, learning that that's what would help me feel better, or sticking your foot outside the bed to stop the room from spinning. And I'm really smart. So I could mostly get through college. I could manipulate my schedule. I didn't have to do 8 a.m. classes, and I'm going on and I'm bebopping along. And I'm getting through school, and and I'm hungover all the time. And then in college, okay, so I absolutely want to respect the singleness of purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'll just say I started accessorizing my drinking with a lot of dry goods. And so anyway, I'm like partying all the time, and I'm always in some sort of altered state of consciousness because I just cannot function. Like I have to be like drunk or high at all times. And I'm getting through college, and then Thanksgiving of my senior year, my best friend commits suicide. My best friend and I had grown up at church together, and he killed himself because he was gay. And I remember vividly, like it was Thanksgiving, we were home from college, and he had committed suicide. And it was actually last March when it occurred to me, because what I had made up in my head for years was the people at my church told me he was going to hell for committing suicide. And I realized last March that it probably was one person who told me that. And, what happened was I vividly remember having this thought that said, my God didn't make him this way and then send him to hell. But at the time, it's mind-blowing, and it's just this crazy, just earth-shattering conception when like Ebby came to Bill and said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Like that's something really awesome that we get to do in AA. And I didn't know that at the time. So I basically used it as this just giant renouncement of God, and went off on the deep end and just drank the whole rest of college. And basically I didn't graduate college. I left there with an hour to finish. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but I do have a photo of myself in a cap and gown, so that's close enough. And if I forget to tell you, I did actually graduate in 2009 when I was sober, so I legitimately have a diploma. But back then, it's like, I have a picture. It happened, right? I guess. Yeah. Anyway, so I come back to Dallas, and very quickly, again, my alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. What I do for a living is highly conducive to drinking and partying, and I work in the media and marketing and stuff, and so we just partied all the time. And I was working with this alternative news weekly, and they had beer reps bring us alcohol, and it was just like, I'm 21, 22, 23, and it's like I had arrived just like Bill, right? I'm dating my boss, so I'm getting paid for a lot of work I don't actually work. And it's like I'm going out and partying all the time, and it's just things are getting crazy. And at this point, what I had discovered was I threw up a lot. Alcohol always made me throw up because nobody likes to throw up, and I'd always say I'm not going to drink enough, that much tonight. But so what I had discovered was a dry good that allowed me to control and enjoy my drinking and kind of stay upright and relatively sober and drink at the bar for days and days and days and days at a time and not throw up. And so I started doing all of that, and I was just out and about all the time. And so then I started a lot of consequences, and I lost that one job. And I don't care if this ages me, but it was back when the video just started coming out on the internet. And so I had gotten this job as editor of this online magazine where I had an expense account, and I was fabulous, and I made all this money, and I was choosing to do stories about drinking and partying. I was going out every single night, and I was expensing all the drinks and just partying like crazy. And then I ended up getting fired from that job, and I started getting this cycle of these consequences where it was get a job at a store and I'd lose the job because I'd get a paycheck and I'd go off on a bender, and then I couldn't show back up, and I'd get another job and blah blah blah. And then it also started getting to be where I was in relationships, and they were dramatic, they were crazy, they were abusive. I would leave and go stay with my bestie and then go back and blah, blah, blah. It was ridiculous. And at some point in there, I was living with my cousin, and my uncle owned these two homes across the street from each other. And so I was living with my girl cousin, and her brother was living across the street, and he was a heroin addict. And so Baird and I would go, and we'd run around, and we would go to any lengths to get what we needed to get. We'd drive across town in ice storms to go to my home bar so I could get free vodka and cigarettes and pizza, and he could go get what he needed to get. And at some point, my uncle kicked me out. So anyway, I met a guy at a bar, and he was a lighting guy for a band, and he needed someone to house and pet sit for him. And he had this cat, and I'm allergic to cats, and no offense to people who likes cats, but I'm just not a fan, and I'm allergic. And so, but I needed a place to live. And another thing I maybe forgot to mention is that I think y'all owe me a living, especially guys. Like, I am absolutely incapable of taking care of myself because, you know, the world owes me a living, and these guys need to take care of me. And so, you know, especially, you know, the lighting guy for Widespread Panic. And so I move into this guy's house. He also has his 13-year-old blind dog. And I'm supposed to, like, you know, take care of the dog. And cats, you know, they're pretty self-sufficient. And I can tell you, I was supposed to walk that dog twice a day, and I can tell you for an absolute fact that I walked that dog one time. Maybe twice. Because I'm absolutely so selfish and self-centered, I'm incapable of taking care of your pet or your home or your love or anything, you know, because I just don't care. Because I'm either always hungover, passed out, or I'm thinking about drinking and how am I going to get money and what am I going to do and who am I going to use and who am I going to da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, so I walked that dog once, and that dog died on my watch. I was absolutely neglectful of that dog, and I had to call that guy Randy in Mexico, and he had to come home, and needless to say, he kicked me out. But that's okay, I had backup, because, you know, I always have guys in the wings. And so there was this guy, and I didn't really like him, you know, he was shorter than me, and I don't know, but he really liked me. And so anyway, he'll do, you know, because someone has got to take care of me. So I moved in with him. Now, he drank as much as I did, but he just didn't accessorize like I did. So he would drink a lot and pass out, and I would drink a lot and be awake, and we were like ships passing in the night, you know, and it wasn't a really great relationship, and then it turned abusive. And when I say it turned abusive, I'm the abusive one. Because if you don't act right, if you don't do what I want you to do when I want you to do it, I'm gonna shove you, I'm gonna be critical, I'm nasty, I'm mean, I'm shoving at you, and all this kind of stuff. And it got crazy, and it got dramatic, and so I got tired of getting beat up. And, you know, mind you, I'm the one, like, thinking I'm a prize fighter, you know, instigating it. And he really didn't lay a hand on me. Let me be clear. So anyway, I get beat up, and I decide that I need a job. So I go get a job. So I'm working at a makeup counter at the mall, and I'm working all of 4 hours a week. And it's a great job for me because I could come to at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd roll into North Park, and I'd do my makeup at work and get all dolled up to go out for that night. And I'd stand there at the counter hungover and just miserable. And by this point, I have to drink like I have to breathe. And then what happened was I decided I needed to move out. So I go get an apartment, you know, with a 4-hour week salary. Totally brilliant. So I go get this apartment I can't afford. And what I would do is I would go and I'd get like a 40 ounce or a pint or whatever I could afford. And then I would go drink at this bar where I could hustle some drinks from some guy at the bar. And then I also would go see the guy at the end of the bar to get my accessories. And then what I would do is I would go home and I would sit on my closet floor, just like cross-legged, like rocking, terrified. And I would drink, and at this point, like, I had to, like, you know, like, space out the alcohol, you know, because it's like, you know, I had like $20 to spend, you know, and it was just, but I had to do it. So at this point, it was one particular night, things turned really bad really fast. I'd gone up to the bar, and these men tried to attack me in the parking lot. And long story short, I moved this homeless guy in with me that night that I was friends with, and so he was protecting me, and anywho, whatever. So I also had a brown recluse spider bite, so he was my nursemaid. And so I was laid up in bed, and he was taking care of my open wound and pawning all my stuff. And then bringing me back, you know, alcohol and cigarettes and whatever. And at some point, you know, he'd go sell all the Pyrex and the CD burner. Y'all know Pyrex at kitchen equipment. I mean, I don't use it. I still don't use it. Anyway, so we were doing that, and the homeless guy, his name is New York, he moves out, and then I get evicted. And I need a place to live. Well, I think y'all might, since the pattern died out. I had met a guy. I don't remember meeting the guy. I was in a blackout, and he was my best friend's boyfriend. We'll use the term boyfriend loosely, but anyway, so she liked him. But I don't care about her because I'm selfish and self-centered, and I need what I need, and I needed a roof. And he had cable, and he had a swimming pool. And he'd buy my vodka and my cigarettes and food if I chose to eat it. And so I moved in with this guy. And y'all, he made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But I moved in with him. I didn't like him, but it's like I needed what I needed. And I needed a place to live. So I moved in with this guy, and then it did get abusive. And he was abusive. And he started flinging me around like a rag doll, and it was crazy, and it was dramatic, and, you know, it was like locked in, like he had the burglar bars and like the deadbolt on like the door to get out, and I couldn't find the key, and so I was locked in there. And, you know, I mean, I'm absolutely not a victim. I absolutely put myself in this position, right? And my car was unregistered, and it was out of gas, and y'all know this stuff, these crazy consequences. And so I would get out of there, and I would like somehow get out, and I would go for like a week at a time, and I started meeting all these crazy people on the streets. Now, y'all, I went to college for journalism, and so I started meeting all this shady people, and like there's some shady stuff that happens on Lower Greenville. So I was gonna write stories and like expose all the badness. But really it was rationalization and justification for doing what I was doing. And y'all, I was running around with one of those little micro cassette recorders, which people really don't like. And I was going to write about it. I was going to be like the next Jack Kerouac and write some fabulous like novel or something. But anyway, but it was really, I was just running around. And I was starting to meet all these people and starting to learn how to do all these licks and hustles on the street. And then I'd go back to Greg's house and regroup, and then like I'd go back and forth. And at some point, you know, he's beating me up, and it's this drama, and he's pulling guns on me, and he's hitting me upside the head, and he's flinging me around, and it's bad, whatever. So I decide that I need to do something to get back at him. And by this point, I had met some criminal degenerate folks, and I ran my little brilliant idea by my criminal degenerate friends. And y'all, when your criminal degenerate friends say it's a bad idea, it might be a bad idea. But what I decided to do was, so I had access to his car, and so I decided that I was going to chop his Chevy Tahoe. Now, y'all seem like a room that knows what chop a car means, but in case you don't, it means sell a car for parts. So I chopped his $40,000 truck for $100, a bag of Cheetos, some Gatorade, and a pack of cigarettes, maybe a Snickers. It wasn't even a real chop shop. It was at like this shady convenience store on the corner of Gaston and Fitzhugh. Do y'all know where that chicken joint is? Next door, it's like a donut stop now. And I once lived in a van behind that with a Haitian refugee. Anywho, I digress. So talk about insanity. Actually, there's a quote in the big book, if I can find it really fast. It talks about, it's in like To Employers, like nobody ever reads that. Here it is, page 140. It says, these scrapes can generally be charged, no matter how bad, to the abnormal action of alcohol on his mind. Okay, so chopping a car for $100, but that's not even the worst thing I did. You know, one of the things that I did do as well is when I was tired of him getting beat up, I got a hold of some hardcore, like, I don't know, elephant tranquilizers, and I gave it to him, trying to kill him. And I don't know if y'all seen that movie Old School with like Will Ferrell, and he like gets shot with some tranq gun and it goes all slow motion and he's like, won't go down. And this is like this guy that just literally wouldn't go down. And I was mad that he didn't die. And talk about insanity, because I literally tried to commit homicide because that is absolutely my best idea to get out of this situation. And thank God he didn't die. I mean, really, thank God. But anyway, that's what alcoholism did to me. I was absolutely insane. Anyway, so I chop his car. Shortly after that, I get arrested. And I'm sitting in Dallas County Jail going, you know, drinking's bad. I don't belong here. I went to private school, you know. I went to college. You know, but by this point, I'm homeless. And, you know, and it's like my family's done with me. My normal friends are done with me. Y'all, I had even dated a Coke dealer at some point, and when he took me home to Mom and said, you have a problem, you might have a problem. Anyway, so I'm on the streets, or I'm sitting in jail, and I'm going, I'm never doing this again, I'm never doing this again. And this particular time, actually, that guy bonds me out of jail. I don't know why he did. And some of y'all might be familiar with the Dallas County Jail. there's, you know, the jail and the courthouse, and it's on the same city block. And then there's that little tiny parking lot that's on that side, like adjacent to the courthouse. And that's where he was. It wasn't even across the street in the Dawson State Jail parking lot. It was right there. Like, I'm literally not even off of the jail property before I have to have a bottle to my lips, because it's like page 24 says, like, I cannot bring to mind with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of a week or a month ago. Like, I'm absolutely without defense against the first drink. And I have to have a bottle to my lips, and I'm like wasted before I go across the street to the bail bondsman. So anyway, we're at the bail bondsman's, and you know, he bails me out of jail, and this is when this guy tells me that he's moving to Illinois. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Because he's my source. He has to take care of me. Like, you know, I need someone to take care of me. And I thought that when you're bounded out of jail that you're supposed to go back to court. And it turns out that you are. But I learned that later. So what I ended up doing was I ended up jumping bond. Didn't know that's what I was doing, but I left and I went up to Illinois, and didn't show up for court, and he was beating me up there. And so I call my granddaddy and I get him to wire me some money, and I come home on like a Greyhound bus, and I'm fully homeless. And I had already sold all my Pyrex and my bedding. I had already sold all my computer equipment, and there was nothing else to sell. Well, Carla Rowell puts it really well. She says, you just do the next indicated thing. And so I started doing the next indicated thing and the next indicated thing, and I was selling my soul and every ounce of dignity and integrity and my love and my joy and my humanity for just one more drink. And I started having things done to me in places nobody should be at 5 in the morning. And I started doing things to people too, and I started engaging in all sorts of criminal behavior and breaking into places and doing this and doing that, you know, because I needed what I needed, and boy, I needed a drink. Because I just was absolutely so soulless and so sick and so hopeless and so miserable. And I was chasing that feeling, that like half a second feeling of that I'm okay. And I chased it over and over again, and even when it stopped working, and it never worked, I did it over and over because I could not do it. You know, I'm absolutely powerless. And so I'm out there on the streets, and I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm lonely, and I'm miserable, and I'm on that hamster wheel, and I don't know how to get off that hamster wheel, right? I got arrested like another time, given deferred probation, couldn't sober up long enough to actually show up. I was arrested, I don't know, again, I can't remember everything. And I was out there on the streets, and I just wanted to be done. And at some point in the beginning of 2006, I went to Nexus, which is an all-women's treatment facility in East Dallas. And what I had found out was that little bond forfeiture had turned into Dallas County wanted to find me really bad. And so I went to Nexus to kind of placate the judge and take a little vacay and sleep a minute. And so I went and did that, and then when I got out, I went right back to doing what I was doing. So I was out for about 4 days, and on Saturday, February 11th, I was speeding in Richardson, Texas, and I had been drinking and partying all night, and everybody knows you do not speed in Richardson, and I did not see the cop, and I was on my way to New Orleans, and I never quite made it to Mardi Gras. And I got arrested, and I was sent to Lew Sterrett, and I spent some time in Lew Sterrett, and then my sentencing was 6 months in the Dallas County Judicial Treatment Center, that's Wilmer. It was 10 years of probation, and it was $40,000 in restitution to pay back for that Tahoe. Because what I had discovered was he had pressed charges, so I have the burglary of habitat felony, and then I also have another felony because I broke into this other guy's house because he was supposed to take care of me, and he reneged, so I relieved him of his DVD players and stuff, and then I gave him the pawn tickets. But he didn't like that, so he pressed charges. So anyway, I have 2 felonies for burglary of habitat. Anyway, I'm sitting there in treatment, like when I finally got to Wilmer. And it's a hardcore behavior modification program. And I'm sitting there looking at the steps on the wall from morning till night going, I'm not like you people. I went to college. I know Shakespeare. I was homeless. I was a liar. I was a cheat. I was a thief. I was a prostitute. I was so very sick, and I stole your money, I stole your guys, I stole your peace of mind, I stole your stuff, I stole your shoes. I stole your money, I mean everything, right? I was absolutely that tornado roaring through the lives of others, and I didn't care. But I know Shakespeare. And I was so prideful and so arrogant, and I was so closed-minded, right? But God, God works, and that was another thing, is I saw that G word in that third step, and there was no way, because of what had happened with my friend, there was no way. But women started coming in from Alcoholics Anonymous, and they started carrying this message. They started carrying a message of depth and weight. And I laugh about this now because it occurred to me last year as well that this one woman who came in was dressed fabulously. She had like kind of like Farrah Fawcett hair, and she was really arty and boho and had like fabulous, like, you know, like a flare jeans and like this fabulous like crossbody bag with like leather and fringe, and she was arty, and like I'm a visual person, so I felt like she was fabulous. And if she could be like sober, so could I. So sometimes, I mean, I know it's super shallow, but you know, sometimes that carrying the message, like we never know how we carry ourselves. You know, the book talks about how, you know, here's the man, his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with a real answer, you know, and maybe, you know, just walking in looking fabulous, that I can be like, yeah, you know, and then of course they have the message of depth and weight, and that's what I started hearing. I started hearing a little bit about hope. I started hearing that they drank like I drank and they felt like I felt, and I started hearing about the allergy, and I started hearing about the obsession, and I started learning about alcoholism. But that wasn't enough to have a true step one experience, because that word admit means to let truth in, like with every ounce of your being, and I didn't do that then. I was basically locked up for all of 2006, and when I got out, I hadn't, you know, found a sufficient substitute. You know, I have my problem, which is that I have a hopeless state of mind and body, right? And that's what the alcohol fixed, you know, and that's what the 12 steps take care of now. But I hadn't done that yet. And so when I got out of treatment, I went right back to doing what I was doing. And I tried this and that didn't work, and this and that didn't work, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I tried everything to, you know, prove that I could drink for like a month and a half. And fortunately, I didn't go back out. But anyway, I had an original sobriety date in January of 2007, but I didn't have a program, I didn't have a sponsor, I didn't have a God that I was connecting to, I wasn't doing anything, I was forging my probation sheets and maybe going to like one meeting or two, and then I had gotten a boyfriend to get out of my sober house. Didn't like him either, but y'all know the pattern. And I'd gotten a job, and I'd gotten a car, and I got clothes in the closet, and I had a bank account, and I had a job, and I was going to work and working at work and not stealing from work. And I was trying to like self-will it and make stuff happen. And I was like white knuckling it. But really what was happening was, you know, I wasn't treating my sickness, my spiritual malady. And so anyway, as I'm doing this and trying to make stuff happen, and because I'm looking at prison if I mess up. And at some point in there, I had a friend. And she had a program, and she had a sponsor, but she got this new sponsor. And all of a sudden, she started going through the steps again, and she got this light in her eyes. Meanwhile, while I'm trying to make stuff happen, I have this gnawing at my soul. Something like, is this all there is? There's got to be more. So Christina got this new sponsor and that light, and I wanted what she had. So I asked her new sponsor to sponsor me. And the first thing her new sponsor said was, are you willing to give this away? She's like, because I'm not going to help you if you're unwilling to sponsor people. She's like, I'm not going to waste my time. So I was like, yes, ma'am, I will give it away. I mean, I was terrified, but I said, okay. And then, of course, she asked, are you willing to go to any length and all that stuff? And then that woman, man, she got me into the book. She got me into the steps. She got me into service, and she got me in the car. And I'm so glad I had one of those get in the car kind of sponsors, because it was like, you know, we would get in the car. We had commitments. Oh my God. So she taught me what I do, you know, what I need to do to this very day was that I have a home group, you know, and that I have committed meetings at that home group, you know, and that group met 3 times a week. And so we set it was in a church, and so it was already set up, but we had to break it down. And then she taught me about greeting, about reaching out to the newcomer, about, you know, making the coffee or looking for stuff to pick up, you know, being of service. And then she taught us about other commitments. So, you know, sometimes we call them H&Is, but carrying the message to treatment facilities. And we were busy, and we were in the car, and we were doing something all the time, and it was great. And we started out on this journey, you know, and so we have these like 3 legacies. And so that's what she taught me. You know, we got started in the recovery program. We got started on the steps. And then, of course, we were doing the unity part with the meetings and then the service stuff as well. But, you know, I started taking these steps and my life started changing. And that's, you know, really what happened is I started out on this journey of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the things that she taught me to do from the very beginning are the things that I still do today. I already said my home group is the Chicago group. But we meet on Monday nights at another group in Plano called the Suburban group. And then, like, I have other commitments and I bounce around with other things like I've started to go to Rowlett Group to this Tuesday night newcomer meeting for a while because it's fantastic. I mean, it's like this great, like super awesome like vibe, and I love it. But now my sponsors encourage me to dial it back a little because I've got some other stuff going on, and and then I was taught to have commitments and be of service at your home group and whatever that looks like. So my old group had, like lots of meetings, so you could sign up to chair meetings all the time, and then be a trusted servant and that kind of stuff. And then, it was like I was taught to avail myself of everything Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer. And so to try this and try that and do this and do that. And, I'm one of those general service people, like I did GSR and I love it. And I love the stuff in the service structure, like Brandon and I serve in the district together. He's the secretary. I don't ever want to be secretary. I did treasurer, and I'm so glad I'm done with that. And I was a little grateful that it was during COVID, so nobody was giving any money to the district. So I didn't have to do much math, because I literally would sit there and try to do formulas and have meltdowns. But I'm grateful that I learned that. And I'm grateful I'm done. But anyway, so this program, as we started going through the steps, and like I said, of course the selfish, self-centered, the ego, like I'm the worst person ever. All the things that I had done that I thought was absolutely unredeemable for. At the tail end of that, I couldn't look myself in the eye. Like I would have to put on makeup because you just do. But I would look past myself, because I was so full of guilt and shame, and I just couldn't look myself in the eye. And as I started on this journey, I started to be able to stand up a little straighter. I started to be able to not only, like what the book says in the 5th step promises, to look the world in the eye, but also look myself in the eye. And then I started being comfortable in my own skin. And I remember this time I was like 5 or 6 years sober, and I was actually sponsoring this woman who literally is a model. She's stunning. And I remember this one particular night, she came over to do step work, and for some reason I had on sweats and like didn't wear heels, because I used to always wear 4-inch heels. And we'd gone somewhere, and there was a guy that I had thrown myself at, like back when I was like a raging alcoholic and stuff. And he was like, Jenny, and I was sober, and he was like, Jenny, come here, who's your friend? And it was like, for the first time ever, when I'm like not 10 feet tall, and I'm just my normal height and kind of no makeup and sweats, and I was okay being around this like stunningly beautiful woman. And I'm like, that's huge. That is absolutely, utterly huge. That finally, because of this, like, I feel like I'm enough. And those times when I feel like I'm not, I've got tools for that. So anyway, as we started on this journey, and I started, going through this stuff and uncovering my defects of character, and, and then starting out on the amends process. And, I'm fortunate that I've gotten to do lots of amends in all the different areas. When I came in, I owed about $80,000. I owed the IRS. I owed the school loan because I blew it off and blew it up my nose. I owed restitution. I bought a Tahoe. So the restitution was like 40 grand. And I mean, I made minimum wage for a large part of recovery. And y'all, I really could have done better. I mean, there were times that I did have, fancy, expensive blue jeans. But I finally was able to change my behavior regarding some of my money and take some action around that and start really paying off these debts, because it was people like y'all that said they had owed like $600,000. And I'm like, oh, I only owe 80, and so it was like, it gave me hope. And it was just like 1 millimeter of a time of doing something different, like with every action I took, regardless of what it was, when it was doing something different, like to go reach my hand out to someone even though I was terrified, or to try to like get off the phone, or to pick up the phone and call someone, stuff like that, or to go make an amends. And, the amends have been life-changing. Our purpose in here is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service, and then of course later on we place ourselves where we can be of maximum service. And there was a time, okay, so the worst thing that I had done that I thought I was unredeemable for and absolutely would never heal from is that 3 times I got pregnant and 3 times I chose not to have those children. Now, I'm not one of those women that was always like, ooh, I want babies. I'm just not one of those. But, you know, I had these abortions, and I literally said, having a baby will stand in the way of my drinking. I mean, like, how selfish could you get? And so as I was moving along in recovery and about 8.5 years sober, all this shame stuff started coming up around some of the prostitution stuff and blah, blah, blah. So my sponsor and I were going deeper into some of the, like, you know, the sex inventory and trying to really heal from some of this shame. And then so she was like, did you ever make amends to those unborn children? And I had not. And so we set out on a journey to make amends to not only them, but 2 of those babies were this one guy. He was my first fiance. His name Jason. And anyway, so I made amends to these children. And I had sent him an honest letter, and I read it, and we did some other stuff that's not in the big book, and I always share offline if anyone asks. And I remember it was about a week later, and my home group is a call-up meeting, and I got called up to the podium, and at the time there was a woman there that had a little 2-year-old, and he was really antsy. So someone was pacing up and down the side of the room. And I remember looking over at Andy with the little baby Jackson, and I remember looking at him, and then all of a sudden I literally felt that shame be pulled out of me. Like I felt it go whoop. It was trippy, but it was gone. Now, the beautiful model girl that I sponsored years ago, she wanted to get pregnant really bad. And she was throwing all sorts of money at it and all this stuff, but I hadn't fit myself to be of maximum service, so I was dismissive. I was ineffective. I was like not compassionate and not understanding and intolerant, really. And was just like, what are you doing? You know, I mean, anyway. And so I had not done the work yet. And so finally when I was able to do the work and that happened and God healed me from that, like shortly after that, this woman asked me to sponsor her who was pregnant. And I got to walk with her on this journey where she almost lost that baby. She had no family here, you know, and got to be there at the hospital. But then shortly after that, my sister called and said she was pregnant. Now my sister, I had kilos of cocaine in her house when I was dating that coke dealer. She was in law school and I didn't care. I would call her in the middle of the night and go, I'm going to die tonight and this is where I am. You know, I broke into her house and stole stuff too. You know, and she would try to take me to numerous treatment centers and this and that and leave me in jail. And it was like, you know, and my sister and I are 15 months apart. She was my person. And so because of this amends process, and I've gotten to make numerous approaches to her, but because of this program and we had, you know, restored a relationship, when she told me she was pregnant, I've been there every single step of the way for that little baby girl. And because of this program, you know, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And so I bet you if I keep doing what I'm doing all day on an everyday continuous basis, my little niece is never going to see me drunk, you know. And the miracle of it is today, like not today, but well, yesterday, in the past 2 weeks, my little niece has taken swimming lessons at my house. Like I was homeless. And I have this home today that is home, but it's pretty great. And I have a pool. And that, you know, nobody uses. So my husband's really excited that Haley came over. I'm pale. But, you know, that Haley comes over and uses. I mean, it's just a miracle. You know, and it's absolutely because of this. And then that guy, the guy Jason, who 2 of those babies were his. The night before 9/11, that we had gotten in this altercation, and I had thrown myself in his car. And long story, whatever, he dragged me in the car because I wouldn't let go of the car, and you know, it was just dramatic, like we do in the Grapevine parking lot. And I'd had those 2 abortions, and then I had accidentally sold myself to a pimp at some point, and I had gone to his place of business to try to get money because I didn't want to do what I was supposed to do to earn the money. And so when I said, Jason, I need money, and I was at his office, and he goes, I don't know you anymore. And he had to shut the door on me, and I will never forget the look of sadness and disdain in his eyes and how he had to do that. And so for 16 years, he had carried around with him those babies and slamming the door on me, and, you know, and did that, what did that do? And then, of course, the night before 9/11 drama in the parking lot. And, you know, the guiding principle of step 9 is that God is in the risk. And it's like we have to, you know, the spiritual life is not a theory. We absolutely have to live it. And if God's in you and God's in me and I'm blocked from you, then I'm blocked from God. And so I needed to make that approach and make that right with him, because about 10 years sober, well, it was like 9.5 when I reached out to him, and he responded like 6 months later. I knew how badly I'd harmed him, you know, and I got to make that right, and he got to heal too, and he got to apologize. And that's an amazing thing, because not only are we trying to make things right and clean up our side of the street and the mess, but you know, we never know what this approach is going to do to those people as well. And so this program is absolutely amazing. And then the next coolest thing is that when that woman said, you know, I'm only going to help you if, you know, you help others. You know, it's like, what does it say? We've got this limitless load that, you know, I don't know where it is right this second, where if we mine it for the rest of our lives, you know, like we'll stay sober. It's totally botched, that quote. But the amazing thing is that this program, you know, our dark past becomes our greatest asset. You know, and when I was at my first meeting at my old home group, I remember seeing the 9 step promises, and I remember seeing the ones about will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. You know, and then it says that, you know, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we'll see our experience can benefit others. And that's absolutely been my experience. And what we get to do in here is we get to like share with others, like, you know, our adventures before and after. And we get to say, you know, I used to drink like this, and then I felt like this, and this program works for me. And you get to take people through the steps, and you get to walk alongside people with this journey, and you get to like talk to them and say, well, this is what I did when this happened to me, or when I married a crazy person when I was 5 years sober because he handed me red flags and I said, I love them. Because God wasn't working fast enough, and I thought, you know, I'm going to be an old maid and I need to have a baby, and then it turns out I didn't really ever want a baby, but you know, whatever. So anyway, so we get to walk alongside with the people, right? And we get to laugh, like talk about this thing as this shows us how to create the fellowship we crave. You know, the 3 legacies really boil down to contribute, belong, and learn. And it's like the more I contribute, the more I belong, the more that I learn, you know, I get to feel wanted, needed, and loved. And it's all when I try to give this thing away and, you know, that I get to keep it. You know, there's a poem that says, it's William Blake, that says, I sought my God I couldn't see. I sought my soul I could not free. I sought my brother and I found all 3. And that's absolutely what happens in this program. And we just get to like trudge side by side on this road of happy destiny. And, you know, and these promises come true, and we get to live this life, you know, we get to have this design for living that works in rough going, you know, like last year sucked. You know, I mean, last year sucked, but we are really lucky that we had this program. You know, it may have been like we were not on all the legs kind of, and it was weird with the Zoom thing, and I miss you people, which is really funny because I didn't think I missed you people, and I certainly hated you when I was squatting in an abandoned building in East Dallas, but I like you people. And then we just get to walk along the thing with others. So I'm going to end with my favorite promise. It's on page 100, and I think it sums up this program beautifully. And it says that both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. This is an amazing program, and it's like, I just didn't want to go to prison. I didn't really want to do this deal, but when I had my last drink, which was 2 key bumps and a 40-ounce of beer on May something, 2007, it was enough for it to go from the head to the heart. It wasn't even, you know, a bad drunk, but it was enough for me to go, oh my God, I need to do this. And so what I do every day is I just say yes and get in the car. So anyway, thank you so much for letting me be here.